Sheriff Joe Arpaio from Maricopa County, Arizona, loves throwing people in prison. And now he's extending that privilege to minors who want to go to a camp during the summer and experience what it's like to be in jail. Now, this thing that he created is a summer camp, and it's known as Summer Stars, and it takes place in Tent City. Now, the campers will follow jail regulations, wear inmate clothing, work as inmate laborers, eat jail food, sleep in jail, tents and bunks, and attend educational programs. Kids will learn some valuable lessons. They will have some fun, too. That's according to Sheriff Joe.
Well, if they have fun, doesn't that defeat the point? Like, scare them straight, make sure they don't go to prison? This makes no sense. So either they're going to have a lot of fun and be like, oh, prison's kind of cool, let's go back there. Or you're going to take your 8-year-old and make it miserable. Yes. And this is their idea of camp. So
there are two groups of kids that would be part of this program. I don't know what kind of parent would be in favor of this, but anyway, 8 to 12-year-olds is one group, 13 to 18-year-olds is the second group. And look, I imagine that the whole point of this is to scare them straight. But I think you can scare them straight by taking them to jail on a field trip for an hour or so. You don't need them to spend 2 nights at a summer camp where they're essentially prisoners.
I don't know anybody who's not afraid of going to jail. So I don't know why you have to instill going to jail from the time I was a kid, I was afraid of going to jail. I don't know anybody who's not afraid to go to jail. And if someone's not afraid to go to jail, that probably ain't going to be afraid when he's in jail either.
Yeah. So this is a disastrous idea for many reasons, one of which is the Zimbardo experiment. So they did this at Stanford, and it didn't take that long. I think they had to disband it after just 2 days. So if you've never heard of this, it was Stanford students, and that's before we knew some of them were criminals, and they randomly picked them and said, okay, you guys are randomly going to be the prisoners, and you guys are going to be randomly the guards. Now, we're telling you ahead of time in the experiment, nobody did anything wrong. Here, it's just an experiment, and we're going to see what happens. The guards immediately became vicious. The prisoners immediately became subservient and broken, and it got so ugly, so vicious, that they had to end it way before it was set to end. You're going to send kids into that kind of environment? And it goes to Sheriff Joe Arpaio's lack of sense completely. Like, he works in this, probably never looked up the Zimbardo experiment, which is enormously famous. First of all, if you're a warden anywhere in the United States, you should look up the Zimbardo experiment.
Yeah, you have to be aware of it.
I mean, how are you not aware of that? And to willingly put kids into that situation that are, that could be more psychologically vulnerable.
Sure, they're not as evolved even as college students.
Right, and because the prisoners started to believe that they had done something wrong. Even though they're incredibly smart kids who were told you didn't do anything wrong, and they're much older, they're in college, and they started to internalize it immediately, like there was something wrong with them, and they deserved their punishment. You're going to do that to 8-year-olds? Are you mental?
I feel like one of the best ways to keep the youth out of juvenile detention centers or from being, criminal adults is by giving them opportunities, right? So, focusing more on educating them with quality education in public schools, making sure that you have opportunities available for them so they can take advantage of that and focus on that as opposed to focus on, bad things in society. I just feel like scaring kids straight isn't the right strategy. You can't try to scare kids straight and then also be in favor of defunding education and defunding opportunities for them.
Yeah, the scare straight thing that it was a very effective film, I think, originally. It was a bunch of these sort of incorrigible youths that were taken into a prison, and they had real prisoners, some of them were lifers, in their face. It was a very intense experience to both witness and I'm sure for the people involved. And the kids were literally sort of scared off of the bad course that they were on. Since then, though, kids have evolved and they're aware of this more. It's, as you say, they don't need this dose of reality. They get it in all kinds of different ways. Prisons are portrayed in everything from Orange is the New Black to different prison documentaries that these kids have access to. They've been given the message, drugs are bad, gangs are bad, a million times. Do those messages help, and should they continue to be communicated? Of course. But to your point, the real heavy lifting of helping these kids is associated with after-school programs, preschool programs. the work in the community that will help these kids with opportunities to feel important. Give them, if you want, the sheriff should find jobs for these kids.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not, I mean, make them feel as though there's a purpose to their lives. This is crazy. It's absolutely asinine.
And I'm really wondering whether or not this breaks any laws, because everything seems like it's okay, like legally speaking, until you start getting into prison laborers, right? You're having minors be prison laborers. I don't know if that's a good idea. I don't know if that breaks any laws. But it's an interesting tactic.
You want to scare them straight about prison? Have them watch Oz, that old HBO show.
Oh, yeah, right.
Oh, man.
Right.
The amount of rape in that show is insane. That scared me straight. I was like, man, I am not going to prison.
Yeah. And that was like the Lido deck of prisons. You know what I mean? That wasn't even as bad as it gets, apparently.
Yeah, and I'll also use JR's point here. We've now covered so many stories about people who are adults who are given supervision over young kids, and it goes awry. And now JR says, no, I'm not trusting my kids to anybody. I'm not having them stay overnight with anybody else, whether it's a priest or it's a Boy Scout or whatever it is, right? JR is our longtime producer.
Boy, by the way, that's a great point. It hadn't even occurred to me. I mean, the opportunity for abuse is enormous in this situation.
And you're going to put your kids in a situation where they're going to internalize that they've done something wrong, and you're going to let the most twisted adults in that state who are running this program have supervision over them in a place where they're supposed to be like in prison and can't protest.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Wow, what a bad idea. And then, and part of the reason that Sheriff Joe does this, even in not assuming bad intent, is if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like nails. So
yes.
So he's like, oh, prison is the answer. I forgot the question. So your kids, what should we do with them? Put them in prison.
When are we going to put Sheriff Joe in prison?
Right? Well, there's a federal investigation right now.
There should be, because he and his department refused to investigate cases of rape and sexual assault that involved minorities. Okay,
so the federal government's looking into it. Hey, Sheriff Joe, you too might be going to camp soon.